All right. Today, as the title says, it will be about AI. It will be about controlling AI, and it will be about the question: how much control do we need? Slash, do we need it? I already blanked that a little bit out. You will see in a couple of minutes why. For the beginning, maybe I want to ask who has experience with AI, or either from working with it, using it in some sort of way, or just reading about it. Just raise your hand. Who has some experience? Who knows nothing about it or thinks it's a magic black box? Okay. Let's hope that I can give you quite some answers at least, yeah, so that you move away from that it's a black box and that doesn't create a lot of fears. Why is that not? It's too fast. All right, what I want to do today, first half of this talk will be actually input with just a quick short questions around, so try to get some feedback from you on the go. Then we'll have a break with pizzas, and then having an open discussion for those that like or that have questions. Then feel free to reach out. Introduction. Little bit about the motivation, why is it so important to cover now governance, which for a lot of people might not really fit. AI is super hyped and fancy, and governance is something, not for old farts, but it's a really boring topic for a lot of people, but it comes hand in hand, and we see that more and more. A little bit about legislation around. So what do we see in the industry in terms of development? Primarily in Europe, but also across other continents. Then a little focus on the tooling. So those of you who have a technical background might be maybe interested in that a bit. So how can we deal now with AI? How can we govern AI in a little bit more practical way? Don't worry, I'm not showing you a lot of code, but just giving some ideas on how to do that. And then, well, in the end, the discussion. About myself, so I got already a short introduction, so I'll not talk too much about me. But I have PhD research background in corporate finance and machine learning. I have worked previously in banking and finance, Stockholm and Frankfurt. And currently, I have two positions. One is lecturer at CBS and research at CBS in corporate finance. But I also work as senior data scientist for 2021 AI, whose logos you see on these slides. And in this company, what we do is we build machine learning models for large institutions. Core focus is on the Nordics, but also in other European countries. And we have a quite strong focus on segments like public, finance, and pharmacy. And hearing about these sectors, you can already guess that these are sectors that are really regulated. So a lot of people watching these sectors, if you have some sort of little guideline for how to handle data and privacy and all that, you will see that it will pop up in these sectors the first. So that also shows that in that company, and as a data scientist in that company building these models, we need to be quite aware of all this governance, all these ethics around that, and how to make sure that it doesn't become the mean machine. All right, talking a bit about the mean machine, there are some other people in the world that sees it a bit like that. And the media loves that, obviously, because it's a good story. So looking at that statement, AI will kill us all, yeah, or you could also phrase it not that drastic, but just say AI will run everything. Who believes that we will end in a situation like that? So a lot of prominent people also from Silicon Valley say, well, at one point we might have singularity and the machines will run the show and not the humans. It depends. Good answer. That's the best answer in academia always. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm? Yeah. Yeah. Well, hmm? I'll leave it. Yes. Good comment. Yeah. Um, yeah. So some see it like that, and obviously, being now from a technology potential right now far away from that. Yeah. It can create some fears and some people saying, maybe we should not use AI. Maybe it's dangerous. Yeah. So then on the other hand, when people say, oh, something is dangerous, then politics comes in and says, great, let's do something, which we call regulation. And that's what we see right now. So let's say 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, no one whatsoever thought about regulating AI or something. Yeah, maybe some people thought about uh, regulating the collection of private data, yeah, especially in the EU. But everything around AI was a bit like, yeah, okay, we anyway don't really know what these data scientists and physicists and whoever makes these algos do, so don't bother with that. But now we see guidelines coming up, and I'll show you some later on. The question is now, obviously, well, regulation introduces usually quite a lot of complexity of rules you need to fulfill, and you need to conduct that. You have some guidelines, rules, whatever, and that can absolutely slow down development. So the question is then, well, maybe we should completely say without regulation we cannot do it, yeah, because then we don't know what the algo is doing and we don't know where this ends. Maybe we cannot turn it back. So maybe we just should not do AI. Yeah? And if you believe it or not, there are people saying that as well, which I would opt against because you might lose a lot of potential. Especially if you look on the global scale. Not everyone is focused on regulation, but some do more than others. So, looking on the motivation, so why is that now happening? Why actually not just the media wants to have a story focus on regulation, but actually politics, but also tech companies focusing on that. Google has announced a board of ethics. Others start to develop little frameworks around data bias, around model bias, etc. And there are some prominent cases why that is important. Does someone know from an interesting case here she would like to share? Where have you heard about that AI is gone wrong? Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That that's one thing. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. There are some examples. I actually have have one. Yes. Mm. Yeah. 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 That's also good example. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So is this now pro or con against the person or for the computer? Um, hmm. The plagiarism. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Might be useful for a lot of PhD students if they get their hands on it. Um, yes, all really good examples. I've a couple of more that I would like to share with you. And the first one, how should it be, comes out of finance. But not only finance, but it's Apple indeed. And Apple made, I actually don't know the date when they launched it, but they made a credit card, the Apple Card, that should be better, more fancy, and more expensive than any other card. So fitting pretty good to Apple. And Apple didn't make the model themselves. Goldman Sachs made the model for themselves, being one of the most prominent banks and hopefully knowing about credit models. But they forgot one thing, and that is to check the model in depth, because it turned out in the end that the model is kind of sexist. And how did that came out? Well, there was a couple who shared the credit card account, and they had everything the same. Yeah, they had household income, they had where they lived. There was everything the same. The only difference was that, well, the wife and the husband, so male and female. And when looking on the credit card balance or the amount to spend on credit, and that's a real credit card, so no prepaid Visa thing or something. So you really take on a credit when you pay. Um, Apple gave the husband nearly 10 times as much credit limit as the wife. So that's not cool. And when that came out, you see a lot of news channels took on the headlines, said, "Great, now we have something against Apple." Uh, and Apple obviously said, "Okay, deeply sorry. We will need to change that, and Goldman Sachs need to revise the model." Yeah, because you cannot say that someone only because of the gender gets less credit than the other one, right? And that's right. That's good, and it's really good that that such cases now in the application of machine learning in credit rating cases uh, draws or brings the public realizing these problems, yeah, and draws media attention to that. I'll come back to that later because that problem actually not only exists with AI and machine learning. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yes, a good comment. Yeah, and that you are not allowed to say in public like that. Um, I agree, and I want that's why I wanted to come back to that, and I said it's also in other areas a problem. Let's maybe take it right now. You're absolutely right. There are other models as well that take gender as a variable into account. That could be insurance, yeah. That could be normal money lending, and there could be models that have nothing to do with AI. Yeah? These are models which we call expert models. So every insurance company and every bank that lends money or every fast loan bank or whatever has a model to assess credit risk, and they need to do that. Yeah, or assess the risk of filing a claim or not. And gender is always also a variable there because statistically, you're right, there is a difference in the behavior. So now, obviously, there are some things, and you can, for example, say that if you are male, and you drive a Volkswagen Golf and you are below 20, you will definitely pay more than the female who drives a Passat and is 40. And that has something to do with the level of risk that you have an accident and you file a claim for an insurance. And the same angle we can take when we argue for credits. But obviously, it's maybe not right if only one variable, in this case gender, and there are a couple of other high risk variables, make the switch. Yeah. So if I'm, or there was also a case of a guy living on the countryside, being male, and wanted to loan some money. Yeah. If he would just have been female, he would have gotten the loan. Yeah, but not as male. And so you can see there's a problem on both angles. Yeah, it's and it's maybe not all right if a variable has this big effect on a model, especially not if it's a variable you cannot change. Yeah, like gender or race or these kind of things. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, there are other models that do that, and you could potentially make a statistical test that says, well, women like shopping more than men, and men like to drive faster than women, and that's could be statistically significant. All right. So banking finance definitely a big thing. To look out for these variables, because if you don't get a credit or something, you will have customers that are pissed off. So it's not good. Another case that is not that new right now, that's a little older, like 1 year or something, is IBM. So IBM has this system called Watson, and Watson, even though a lot of people think it's like a platform for something, it's basically, well, everything with super high tech from IBM is labeled Watson nowadays. And they try to use Watson for a lot of different things. Yeah, starting with this Jeopardy show that a lot of people maybe know here, where Watson won in this game, which was quite a nice demonstration, pretty cool, and a lot of the research looks really nice. And then they started to think about how to make money with that. So how to expand this technology they developed to different things, and one is the commercialization in healthcare. So using the system to make predictions on different things in healthcare. So one was that they tried to predict treatments or suggest treatments for certain symptoms that nurses or doctors observed at the client. That was fairly okay results, I think. The other one was with a focus on detecting cancer. So maybe some of you know that you can use certain image scans from parts of the body, where you can then, looking on these images, you have different areas that are more or less activated based on the type of cells and things like that. So I'm not a doctor, so but you can use these images and compare it, simply speaking, with each other, to then detect where something is odd. And if you have a label of the images where you know that they were taken from people that having breast cancer, and if you see there some activation in the area of the breast or at the lung or wherever, yeah, then, well, it's obvious that you say, let's train a model on that, and based on the images, try to predict cancer really fast. Yeah, because this is exactly how doctors do it, to a large extent at least. One part in how they determine whether there's cancer or not is looking at these images. And if you look at the images, you see that you need quite a lot of experience for that. So it sounds like a very good application. But if you do something wrong there, it has quite big impact. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that this is right. Yeah, especially in the false prediction, when you say someone has has no cancer and they have, right? That will be the worst. So, hmm? 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 Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm? Hmm? Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You go even away from the model, right? So I'm saying, okay, this the model is biased. That's not good, and you say the application also. Yeah. Mm, mm, yeah, yeah. Mm, mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. But that's then also well, I mean, even if you're able to predict it, right? Then I think from an academic perspective, you should say, well, you also want to know the reason. Yeah. Well, I know a lot of colleagues in economics that will say, well, it's fine if you can predict the stock market, but I want to know why this happens, right? Otherwise, you don't get a publication. Mm, mm, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we now leave also the model and discuss the usage, right? And in healthcare, you can take all these areas of wearables, yeah, and potential business opportunities in wearables compared with insurance. Um, well, then we then we can fill a couple of hours with that discussion alone, right? But yeah, definitely, I fully agree. But that model was also criticized. So third application that when I hear some Twitter and things, then maybe you came across this one, which is a chatbot from Microsoft. And this chatbot now, after using it and training on other people's Twitter feeds, became quite racist. Yeah, and it became so racist that Microsoft needed to shut it down. Yeah, because otherwise that would be also again a good story. Yeah, a company makes racist Twitter bots. What about AI runs the world and everyone is racist? So that's also something where obviously the bot didn't become racist because Microsoft told him, yeah, do that, yeah, but it became that because a lot of content was tweeted in on some channels that was kind of the angle of racist, and then the bot well used that and well formed a view like that as well. Yeah, so you can say that if you want to do something like that, and you have certain well, let's call it communications, yeah, that are not aligned with what you want in society, then you need potentially a filter or something like that, and then make sure that this is not happening. Otherwise, it would, yeah, create an effect that also the real users would potentially react more with, in this case, racist comments, but potentially also with, you could do that in other areas as well. Yeah, so also when you use NLP, that could be a thing. So now I showed you 3 examples from tech companies: Apple, IBM, and Microsoft, and all from the US. So the question is then, well, if we look on that, is this only a problem for tech firms? Should only tech firms look at that? And, well, I can guess already the answer a bit. I mean, we had something from pharmacy. Who thinks that that this is only for tech companies to look at that, to look at this problem? Yeah. Well, AI and the problem related to it. Who thinks it's only tech? Thinks. Well, technology companies, let's say, their core focus is on technology. Let's say not a bank or pharmaceutical company. They have also IT departments, but Hmm? Yeah, exactly. So it is indeed maybe a problem of all kinds of companies, and that is because not only tech companies. Oh, what is this? Okay. Well, not for me. Um, all right. So it's obviously also a problem for a lot of other institutions. And even though Apple released this credit card, yeah, it could also be Mastercard or Visa. Yeah, uh, Twitter chatbot is not state of the art anymore. Everyone can more or less build one. So whenever you like to use that, well, that could become a problem you should focus on. And we see now companies automating more and more processes. That's not so new. They have done it a lot with RPA, with certain other expert models. Yeah, they even automated to some extent decisions. And now they try to get to the next level and automate it even more or better with AI. So if we look on, for example, on models in production from Gartner, one survey said that in 2008 and 18, we had around 1, maybe 2 models in production. So running with an exposed API, doing something automatically. Yeah. So for example, you have the people working with your credits. They just send a request to a model running somewhere on the server. They get a result back and say, you don't get a credit, you get a credit, you are in the middle somewhere, so we need to discuss. Then 2019, so last year, it was an average around 5 models, and that's not for the Googles or so. That's for SE or for some really, you say, standard non-tech company that uses some sort of model somewhere. And say some sort of model somewhere, because here starts the first problem. If you ask a company or you ask a manager there or a tech person there, how many models do you have? And you ask them in the company, you ask 5, 6 people, you will get 5 or 6 different answers. Yeah. Some say 1, some say 2, some 3. Yeah. And then you need some consultancies to figure out how many models they actually have. And that is a problem. And the problem is because if no one really knows from senior management where they run this, how should they know if something goes wrong or if this impacts the decisions in the wrong way? Yeah. And as you can see, Gartner at least predicts that this will grow more or less doubled every year. So later this will slow a bit, but So if we have this year 10 models in production, you should also think about a way to control it. Yeah, if everyone working with this makes a model, puts it on a server, and then leaves the company, yeah, and most other people, first of all, don't know how this stuff works. They don't know how to update it. They don't know how to measure whether it's good or not. If this is not just used for fun in the lab, but really in production, that's something you should be seriously concerned about. Yeah, so is quite a problem. So a lot prominent examples are still from the tech giants, but we can see that in basically all organizations that you should think about that. And these three industries I mentioned where we have a strong focus on, well, they have it traditionally. Yeah. Whenever you implemented something there, a quality measure or a risk measure or whatever, you had a lot of compliance and governance to fill out. And for banking and finance after 2008, that became like massive work. So you have a whole department only doing that. Which brings us to the second large point, which is legislation. Just so maybe not keeping my promise to stick with the time, so maybe do the break right after that. So legislation. What is that now when we discuss AI? And it's very young still, so actually we don't have real, even though I call it legislation, but we don't really have a legal framework for that for now. We have some guidelines. The first one actually not on this slide, but the first one came out in Canada, which mentioned, okay, we maybe need to look after these models and specify certain guidelines, how to develop machine learning models, how to put them into production, what to check off for if we want to use it in a critical but potentially also in a non-critical area. And then after that, so if we just look from 2019 on, we see some developments in Singapore, also surprisingly China being here quite on the forefront. OECD, World Economic Forum, up to the EU. Yeah. And we have actually talked with the EU and with Singapore about their guidelines, what they are doing, and I think also a bit with the World Economic Forum, but don't know so much about that. So basically, what all these frameworks have in common, they look primarily on the model side. So how have the model been built? Who has built the model? Were there certain risks that they have assessed before? What they don't leave out, and that is now interesting, where you mentioned a lot of the ways how it's applied. That's often not really on the framework side so far. Yeah, it obviously asks, okay, what kind of area is it? Yeah, but if you can maybe misuse a model and take a very well built model, but for a different purpose, yeah. So I could, for example, train a credit scoring model or a fraud claim handling model, and then misuse it to find the holes in it, and then trick the insurance company. Yeah, that's obviously not what the frameworks then cover. But they are more and more around that when you as an organization, you want to use these models in production, you can follow the guidelines to make sure that you are compliant at that, that not at one point an auditor knocks at your door and says, hey, nice, you have 4 or 5 models in production to run your business, let us check it. And then at the end they say, well, you need to close down all of them. Yeah, that would be maybe pretty negative business impact. Yeah, so what they also have mostly in common, that these frameworks are guidelines and checklists on the paper. EU, for example, that will come out soon. Will be around 70 questions you need to answer. So that already, if you tell the data scientist, you know what, when you're done with your model, you need to answer these 70 questions. They will be maybe not that happy about that. But they maybe need to do that to some extent. Because some of the questions are actually relatively technical. And if you ask a manager to do that, they say, I don't know. But governance is here to stay. So because people are concerned about it and because you need some structures, we see actually a development more towards governance and potentially even towards a law rather than away from it. And this again, depending on the sector, the FSAs, for example, for financial regulation, both in Denmark and in Germany, they started now to make these some of the guidelines binding if you want to use AI in, for example, credit scoring. Yeah, not all of the 70 questions from EU or something. That might be maybe overkill if you want to have that binding today, but some of it. So why is this now, or why? What is this about? Yeah. So this whole framework of what will develop is well, guidelines on one side. That's where we see most of the development right now. So maybe nearly all countries develop guidelines on ethical AI and how AI should be done, how you should control for certain bias in the model, how should you put your model in production, yada yada yada. Yeah. Okay. And they also give some suggestions how to go about that. Then we have regulations, and that's in some industries, and mostly in the industries they're used to that. So poor those industries, right? They only get more. But that's also good that they get it because these are usually the quite critical ones. So where you want to make sure that everything goes well. And then we have well, potentially in some areas also that companies will get fines for that. Yeah, like in 2-3 years ago, it was fine to say, yeah, we made for a startup, we made such a model, and that was on TV. Yeah, there was a documentary of a German startup making a credit assessing model for fast loans based on Facebook data, and the person giving the interview was saying, yeah, actually, I don't really know how the model makes the decision. It's just becoming better and better, and it's like a black box. Today, he would not say that again, because then the FSA from Germany will knock on his door and say, oh, please, guy, shut it down. Having black box algorithms and not really knowing why they are doing something, it will not be a satisfying answer, and it is in finance not today the case. So everyone, for example, if you take in Denmark alone, you have the right to ask the bank, why didn't I got a loan? Or why do I need to pay this interest and not that interest? Yeah. And so that is, yeah, that is coming, or sometimes even there already. So last part of the legislation, I would say state of the art thing, even not really really out. So that's just some briefing paper. So we'll be out maybe in a month or something. Are these EU guidelines on ethics and artificial intelligence? So that was, and that basically gives some suggestions how to do that from the EU, and most likely some of it at least might become legislation. So the EU, and that's actually quite positive. So they didn't thought, oh, we know everything and we just do it. They have luckily also asked some companies. So they have collaborated with around 50 companies from the EU, whereby 48 were actually really big ones. Yeah, there were like the Siemens, the Daimlers, the Maersks, yeah, all the big companies. What two smaller companies? One where or the company I work. Yeah, all that they asked, they had some models in production. And yes, yes. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, depends. Y- Mm, 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 mm. So, mm, mm, mm. No. So in that case, clearly no. I would say, I mean, it will also depend on the use case, and image recognition is maybe not always used in super critical areas. But I also have to say that even with image recognition, and if you use a neural network, you can somehow, it's a bit more difficult, but somehow get some transparency in and see which areas of the picture it will activate the neural network to make a prediction or not. So there are certain tools where you can do that. There are also statistical ways or method ways to if you train a neural network on predicting on a normal tabular data set something, you can also get a bit around the fact that it's a non-probabilistic model and you cannot get directly variable impact or feature impact on the prediction, but you can get it with some sort of simulation. So it's possible to get an indication at least. But indication exactly. But since machine learning is always statistics, it's always kind of, and that's also a thing that when you discuss with management or so, or even with auditors, that's the worst because they count every little thing. And with machine learning, you cannot always say that the model will always do the exact same prediction because machine learning, it means that the model learns, so it gets retrained and it will adjust the weights in the function, whatever function that is. Yeah, let it be neural network, regression model, or something else. Um, it will always adjust that to whatever pattern is in the data. And with that, the prediction might also change over time. Yeah, I'll give you a quick example before the break. If we do a credit prediction and we have one really bad area, yeah, and we definitely know that if people live there, they will not pay their credit. So the bad area will activate the neural network, or will be a high predictor in the model. So now over time, this bad area transitions towards a good one. Yeah, it becomes maybe hip and fancy, and a lot of highly educated professionals move there to have their offices there and say, "Whoa, this is much cooler than being somewhere else." Well, over time, the behavior of the people will change. The people there will become good credit payers, and you will see in the data that that will pay back the loan. Yeah, and they pay all the interest and stuff. So retraining the model will then show different results and show also different impacts of variables, and then and that obviously takes some time, but you have also use cases where it is faster. Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe a different bank gave them the loan, right? Yeah, or if you're high risk, you also get a loan, right? But you pay more, and then some take it because they need to, and others not, and then you can also get experience. And you can, even if you have smaller sample doing that, you can put more weights on those examples to adjust it more. Good. I think in interest of time, let's have the break here, and then afterwards I have a couple of slides on the tooling, so that what I said now, what comes in legislation, how can we overcome that from a method perspective? Well, and then let's debias it with that framework and test it again, and then after that it was even more biased than before. Um, well, that's now there was obviously a little problem in the data selection. Um, but if you have these frameworks and you don't apply it really in detail in the right way, then it can go wrong like that. Yeah, and that's fine if that happens in a development process. Yeah, but you need to make sure that then doesn't happen in the end. But there are frameworks that can test bias for certain things, so that's already quite good. Now you should just use them also when you build models. Hmm? Yeah. Yes, true. I mean, you will always have some thought of things, but then you could also say, yeah, if you as a human look on things, yeah, and you see this, maybe that could also influence your decision a bit. But if you have a data set, let's say you have gender and you want to keep it in, yeah, you could also just say let's take it out, right? Take no risk, and we will not use gender, we will not use any personal information, we will not use race as any variable in the model to be safe. Yeah, that could be a decision. You could also say, or you anyway make before building a model, you make a correlation analysis. If you see that a lot of variables are correlated with, let's say, gender, maybe you should also take them out. Yeah. Um, so there are a lot of things, and then the question is obviously always, what is your use case? Is this a real a problem, or is it not? Yeah. If I want to suggest you with my model the best media to consume, yeah, or the best movie to watch, maybe I really want to have a gender bias here, yeah, because otherwise I mean, there may be some films that men would like to watch more, and some that women would like to watch more. So there it makes sense, yeah. But in other things, it should be neutral. That yeah, and with race the same. So three other points: how to now improve models and avoid biases, and the problem of bias could also be simply, well, improve the model selection. So select a model that is better, that is maybe not showing this bias like we have detected with such a tool. Choose choose a proper training set. Um, yeah, the how the data looks like that you get in production. Yeah, so if you want to predict cats and dogs on iPhone pictures, well, please then use the database with iPhone pictures of cats and dogs, and not HD quality pictures. And well, avoid using critical factors like gender or things like that. So now we have the model cleaned up with bias. So now, well, the point on the reports comes. So as I said, the regulators, they have reports, or have generated that, have made questionnaires and guidelines, and they are often on paper. They are, how should it be, different. They are not linked to code. So you can actually code something, write something different on the report, and because no one or only very few people will understand your code, you are fine. So makes life much easier. That's obviously not how it should be. And other thing is, checklist might be not always updated. Yeah, you retrain the model. Maybe you have a job schedule that retrains the model every time. Um, maybe two, three times a day. Maybe only once a week. But definitely I can guarantee you that even if it's only once a week, you will not fill out the questionnaire every week new. Yeah, there are some questions that can stay like that anyway, but others where you should maybe do some tests again after retraining a model. So this will also not happen. And the questionnaires are often done from non-data scientists. So because the data scientist is expensive, has no time, and definitely don't want to fill out questionnaires, uh, he or she says, well, please, auditor, or not the auditor, but some sort of compliance regulation officer, please fill it out. Yeah. And they sit in front of the questionnaire and think like, is this right? Is that right? I don't know what he did in the model. Maybe this. Then two times he asked the person, yeah, and then he or she feels embarrassed because asking all the time is maybe not so good. So that's also a problem, right? So it would be much better if we could bring it to a form where the data scientists could then fill out the critical things without being too bored by doing that. So questionnaires are good, but some problems. Um, and so the thing, or one of the end statements I would leave you with here before we go into discussion is, how would it be then if we would get set up a set of requirements and automatically check those instead of having the questionnaire? So automatically checking which variables are important. Well, that we can most likely do. Yeah, we can maybe check for bias. We can maybe check if we used variables that are likely to be biased and remove them technically. Would be maybe also nice if we have such questionnaires or something, and having a system that would check for some of the questions if they are fulfilled or not. Yeah, so that would be a really cool system, which will reduce the amount of manual work related to governance, while still keeping the potential security of having such governance frameworks. Yeah, kind of. If you want like that, yes, you could say that, but I'm not going that far saying we need a machine learning model for that. I'm just saying a system, right? It could be also just a manual check. Yeah, it could be if you upload data, you have an engine that reads the data and checks whether there's variables that's called gender. Yeah, um, obviously, you could say, yeah, I can trick the system very easily. I call it mambo jumbo, and instead of male M and F for male and female, I call it one and zero. And but well, you can always trick a system somehow. So it's not that you get a completely bulletproof thing that no one can kind of trick. I think it would be already quite nice if we get something easy to use, so without overcomplicating stuff, slowing down development, but still getting some of these governance frameworks in place. All right, and that's the input part. So a little longer than I thought, but that's fine. So now that's the open discussion point.